Nick, Tex, Connor, John, great to see you all again. Huge thank you for being here and making time for this. I'm super excited for this one. And huge thank you to all of you for being a huge part of the podcast thus far. You've all been on multiple times, and I really appreciate all that y'all do. If people missed those past episodes that we've done, would you mind filling them in a bit about who you are and all the incredible things you're doing in this space?
Honor to kick it off with you guys. So Nick Greyno, strength and conditioning coach, most recently at TCU, primarily working with football and baseball, and then University of Maryland with women's lacrosse and field hockey. I just actually moved to Columbus, Ohio this past summer, working on still getting some stuff off the ground, performance business wise. And then currently head strength and conditioning coach at Dublin High School.
Tex McQuilkin, captains and coaches. Nick, excited for you. West Side, Columbus, just a freaking historic strength and conditioning town, dude. You'll crush it. Yeah, captains and coaches. I travel the world teaching people how to teach people and coaching high school lacrosse in Austin.
Connor Schoepp, spent the last 10 years working in the team setting, professional collegiate sports as a performance coach, return to play, sports science. Just recently, about a year ago, moved to Pittsburgh, where I opened Rebuild Performance Rehab, where we specialize in return to play and strength conditioning.
John Bloom, kind of like Connor, about a year and a half ago, left college, was the director at O. Roberts, moved back to Dallas, where I grew up, and opened up Elevated Athlete Development, working mostly with middle school, high school athletes. And now also at the start of this school year, took over as the head strength coach at Parish Episcopal High School. So doing both of those right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And all of you have this thing in common that continues to come up when I'm talking with people in the space is, maybe they start working with a team at the collegiate level or the professional level or whatever it is. And there seems to be this thing that occurs for a lot of them where they want to transition out of that into private sector, or owning their own business and doing their own thing, just changing up kind of what that workflow looks like for them for one reason or another. Maybe it's family related, maybe it's, trying to settle down and, settle someplace for a long time instead of possibly moving around every few years or whatever it is that way. There's a lot of reasons people do it, but a lot of them feel like there's this disconnect as far as how they do it, right? What do they have to consider? What do they need to know before they transition out of, a somewhat comfortable position where you have a guaranteed salary, you have benefits, you have all these things that are provided to you regardless of what happens versus, being solely responsible for all of that on your own. It can be an uncomfortable transition for people that way. So I'd love to hear more about, from each of you, what that transition was like for you. When did you know it was time to maybe change to the private side of things, if you will, and what that whole process looked like? Because I would assume that sometimes things go according to plan and sometimes things veer off and you hit some bumps along the way.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and kick it off again with this. So I've spent as an athlete and as a strength and conditioning coach primarily in collegiate athletics. I have 10 plus years kind of in that field, have lived kind of like I touched on a little bit before, even when me and Connor were just catching up, but I've lived in 8 different states. I've moved around all over the country for new job opportunities or just new areas for professional development in hopes to progress my career and just try and pour as much into that as I genuinely possibly could. So like I've always thought about at each stop kind of doing my own thing or how I would proceed to be able to kind of do that. So when the question comes up on kind of when did I know it was time, I genuinely still right now don't know if it was the right thing to do, but like am definitely 10 toes down and willing to figure it out. Like even with the relationship I'm currently in, both being in collegiate athletics, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, you're already doing distance. So to climb the ladder even more, do you move 15, 20 hours away instead of being 6 hours away? Or do you kind of take your knowledge, run with it and try and build something for yourself? And even like Chris kind of touched on, I felt like what better area to kind of like go and give yourself a shot than the Columbus area. So I ended up leaving my job to move here Started my own LLC and moved here with absolutely, I wouldn't say zero plan. I had like a little bit of a plan, but I really had no clue what I was doing. Moved here with no opportunity, made a couple connections early, and ended up landing the role that I'm in now, which is, a head strength and conditioning coach at a high school down the road, while I'll continue to navigate and figure out my plan of attack and how to push what I'm trying to work on as forward as possible. But like I said, like, I've thought about it. I was confident in the relationships and stuff I've built, like, in this profession up until this point, and at the end of the day felt like, I've seen a bunch of people go and do it, so it's more one of those, are you willing to bet on yourself and willing to kind of just put in the time to be able to try and make it work?
Yeah, we can keep the order going. Knowing the time, that's when the profession starts to push back against your ambitions. So when I was applying to other jobs, I was at Georgetown University, applying to other schools to try to get more, because there was limited resources there. The industry was telling me, "Hey, I'm applying to this job. Can you help me out?" And they're like, "You're the right guy for the job, but I've already asked or put my name on the line for somebody else." So little things like that, where it starts to work against you, even though you're friends in this whole community, they're only willing to support one person versus you. So you're going to feel this ceiling that's just preventing you from growing. And when you feel you're up against the walls and trying to burst out of that ceiling, and the profession is limiting you from growing as a person, growing as a professional, that's how you know it's time. So I'm sure we all got countless stories of that, where just circumstance screwed us out of something. And it's like, all right, well, in the real world, or the world I want to surround myself in, and the network and the life that I want to lead, that's not how we do business. So you will experience that at some way, shape, or form. So that's a big sign when the profession's pushing back against you.
Yeah, man. I felt like you were talking to me there, Chris. That was crazy. Yeah, man. I think about me, man. I'd spent so much time in the team setting. I'd made so many sacrifices over 10 years, and like, it was all that I ever wanted, right? And it was one of those things where it's hard to even like fathom trying to do something else when you've poured so much into trying to make this work, right? And I think for me, man, like, when I know it's tough, because for me it was like a death by a thousand paper cuts, right? Like, to be honest, I probably should have got out a couple years ago and made that transition. But it was one of those things, man. It was just like, just don't give up, and like, you keep trying, and just kind of like what Chris was talking about, man. Like, you just kind of keep getting pushed back, and it had gotten to a point where like it is starting to eat away at me so much that I had started to lose the joy of why I was doing it in the first place, right? Like, when I think about like why I got into strength conditioning, it was really just because like I loved being a part of something bigger than myself, right? Like, that was why I got into the team setting. And then by the end of it, you have all that turmoil with like, a lot of the stuff that we're all familiar with, right? Like lack of respect, lack of resources, lack of work-life balance, lack of stability, like whatever it is, right? Like all of those things. And I just got to the point where like being a part of bigger something, or something bigger than myself, turned into, well, now I'm just a cog in the motor, and I feel like I'm just so stuck. And so, and it got into a point where I was just like, I'm done. Right. Like, before I even stepped out to do my own thing, to get into the private side, like, I just left my job, and I really had no idea what I was going to do. I all these opportunities lined up. I was like, all right, this is kind of my last push to get into the field. I was interviewing for all these jobs, which at the time I was like, oh, like dream opportunities, right? Like big positions where I was going to go spend the next 10 years before eventually getting out. And then, man, I was just able to talk to a couple people in my life that had kind of gone through that similar thing. And it was just like, I felt like I was just chasing a dragon, right? Like, it was just one of those things where I was just on this like hamster wheel of like, oh, wow, maybe this thing that I'm chasing just doesn't even really exist, right? And like, for me, I'd gotten just to the point where I was like, if I want to reach my potential, and if I want to live my life in a way where I'm going to be fulfilled and I'm going to, you know, get what I actually want out of it, that's when I knew, I guess, I had to step away and do my own thing.
Yeah, for me, I would always, even like beginning in my undergrad when I started working, I'd always had in my head like I want to go run my own business. Was kind of going down the college route, and kept progressing there, and there was still always kind of that pull in my mind of like, hey, like maybe this is the year, and then I get pulled back in by maybe the next bigger job or whatever is going on with the team. But there was a couple things I remember with that last year at ORU that kind of pushed me where one, I think it just got to where I really wanted the autonomy to choose who I worked with versus, okay, these are the people that are recruited and I have to work with them, where there's so many great athletes I got to work with. There's also some that are not always the easiest or ones I want to work with. And I think there's a lot to learning to motivate and work with people that don't necessarily always want to be there. But I think as I reflect, I found myself like I feel closest to my purpose when I'm working with people who really, really want to get better, and we're both in alignment there. Um, and so that was part of it. Part of it was the changing nature of college with the transfer portal, NIL, and just kind of the shifting environment there, and where that was headed. Um, but I think, when we think about making like, am I making the right decision? Is this the right timing? I don't know that there is like a right, like I could have kept being in college right now and like, be happy with my wife. It'd be great. Just be different. I think like you make the decision and then you make it the right decision, or you choose the timing and you make it the right timing by what you do after that. Um, and yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of factors, but I think it'd be great in college. But I think the biggest thing that I've also enjoyed, and one of the reasons, is also the power to get to create something, versus in college, right? Your support staff, and there's great parts with that. But like with a business, you get to create something and you get to watch it grow. And I think for me, like that's when I feel the most passion, like is getting to have that ownership and create and see the full, outputs of the inputs I'm putting in directly correlated to what I'm doing and how I'm leading it.
Now, to your point, I think it can be scary at first, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this is all on me now. But I think to your point, you can make that the right time. You can make it the right situation. It's all on you at the end of the day once you make that leap, which,
Yeah.
again, if you've never been in a situation like that before, it's terrifying at first. Like when I moved down here to Raleigh from Maryland, I'll be honest, I was really freaking worried. Different situation, different circumstances, but that concept of going to a whole new place, doing a whole new thing that maybe you haven't done before, maybe you've done it a little bit, but the stakes are different this time. It's very intimidating, and it's funny, John, that first part of what you brought up, it literally just made me think of like Tex 101 over there, like captains and coaches and all the incredible stuff he's doing, just talking about how to work with people, how to actually be a coach. And it's literally one of those things that we need it now more than ever. And we've done whole podcasts in the past about like the shift that's occurring in athletes. And I don't want to get too lost down that rabbit hole, but I want to mention that real quick because like there's people doing incredible work out there to try and, help us all be a little bit better at how we do that. And that's something that I feel like we really need in today's day and age. What kind of things, as you've made this leap, as you've made this transition into the private world, and obviously some of you have done other things in the private world where maybe we're working with a high school or something like that now. What kind of things have maybe surprised you, caught you off guard? Is there anything that you realized like, oh shoot, I wasn't ready for this? Or was there anything that really like, you knew that you were getting into something big, but you didn't necessarily realize just how big this world that you just stepped into might have been?
I'll jump in. My guidance here would be everyone is a resource. Everyone is a mentor that's ever owned a business in this scenario. So when I was at the college level, I had the opportunity on weekends to go travel the world. I was part of a traveling seminar contracted by CrossFit. So in the weekends, I was meeting business owners, right? CrossFit gym owners. And then during the week, going and working with unsatisfied strength coaches. So seeing and meeting the dichotomy between this, people during the week were so upset. They've never met these people that own their own businesses, built their own communities. They were just mad against the word CrossFit. And then CrossFitters, they were just so focused on their people. And a lot of light bulbs went off. Okay, yes, the college coaches were very invested in their people, but so were 100 other people. Their sport coaches, their teachers, their professors themselves. And so that would pull away from the connection between strength coach and kid. But on the weekends, you saw these communities. We would drop in on Friday nights just to get a pre-seminar pump, and you get to know the owners. And then you see how they took care of their employees. They took care of us because they were hosting us for the weekend. And you just saw this world-class experience that a business owner was providing for those people. Way different than what we would create in a college weight room for that 1 hour. So it was an awesome thing to just see all over the world, hundreds of communities, and just how it could be done because they cared so much. It was their livelihood. I mean, blood, sweat, and tears, the buildings that they built versus just the weight room sessions that they were leading. So that was very insightful. So never one to miss an opportunity, was always having that conversation of how they do it. Because I saw great business owners and I saw bad business owners, and just seeing how they operate to build this personal experience and brand, each one of them that they were providing. So very, very cool experience. If you ever meet, if it's a coffee shop that is mom and pop owned, if it's a bookstore, whatever it is, just try to find the owner, talk to them and what they're giving to their community. It still reps, it still counts, even though it may not be fitness or strength and conditioning.
I think one thing that I've seen is like you've mentioned, Dan, like when you're taking that step and it's like now you're starting from nothing, no benefits, no salary, like maybe no client. It's like there's a really scary leap there. But I think what I've also seen is kind of the reverse of that, where like once you get into it, and there might be some time where you have to start building it and growing it, but I think the rate of growth you can have can be much more exponentially greater and faster than maybe in the team sector, where Texas talking about trying to get these jobs, and it's like when you're in a job, like you could maybe progress some, but you're not really gonna progress your salary that much at the same university. There might be certain levels, but ultimately you're capped by then maybe taking another job, and then taking another job, and like you have to make these moves to do that. Where if you're running your own thing or you're in the private sector, like you have no cap, and there's no like capped rate of growth either, where you could be making completely different amounts of money or growth from the beginning of year one to the next year, and you can be in the same place. And like I think about like Alex Mosey, he talks about this, where it's like he talks about people switching lanes. Like if you just do the same thing for years and years, like imagine what you will do if you continue just building the same thing for years. And I think about that too. It's like now with business, like I'm a year and a half in, like imagine the growth I've had from 0 to a year and a half, another 20 years down the line. And like, there's no cap there. There's no move I need to make. Like, and it's based on what you're willing to put into it and how you grow it and how you lead it, and things like Tex was talking about with like the community you're building and the blood, sweat, and tears you're putting into that thing. So like there's like, and I've talked to people where it's like there's that scary leap that you have to make of stepping away from all that. But I think once you can get past that and you make maybe some of those initial sacrifices, like then there's no ceiling to it of what you can build it to.
Yeah, and I'll go in and even kind of build off that a little bit and go back to even what Chris was talking about earlier with, again, like throughout your career, you're trying to, like all of us, I'm sure, have pour as much into whatever you're doing as possible, create the best product, build the best relationships. Again, resources can be limited, money can be limited. And also time can be extremely limited. And that's one thing I started really to realize in the past couple of years. It's like, okay, from a time standpoint, how much are you pouring into what you are doing and what are you actually getting out of that? You know, let's just take a simple job, for example. You get your degree, you potentially pursue a master's degree, you get X, Y, and Z certification. You need all of these years of experience to even get your foot in the door potentially. And, that person might be taking somebody that they know anyways for the job, and you could potentially be more qualified than that person. So you're running into that. And then also, hypothetically speaking, let's say hours that you're working within a week. So let's say you make $50K at a job, you work 7 days a week, you're in season, full travel with teams, you're now working 70 to 80 hours a week. And by the time you actually end up crunching numbers and all that, you find out you're making $13 to $15 an hour for your time. So what I really started to do was to consider, okay, if I'm pouring what I'm doing into this university, which is, again, my ceiling is already capped in my position for what I'm trying to accomplish from a professional standpoint, and I could be a line cook at a Chipotle making 6 figures, working the hours that I'm doing at this school, then genuinely, what am I doing? You know what I mean? And I've laughed at myself 1,000 times over this, and I think about, good training, the time that you're putting into, the access that you actually have to athletes, because that might be a few hours per week. You hope that people are coming back over summer and training because you're also investing and pouring in and trying to really build something great at the university you're actually working at. But it's like most of the time, kids are going to be off paying somebody else to train with them anyways. They're probably not truly looking at your packet depending on the university level that you're at and depending on times, access to facility, training being convenient potentially to them. You might not get the opportunity to do as much as you'd actually want to anyways with the athletes that you do have. So I started to really think, okay, the time I've invested into this from a personal level, professional level, the relationships I've made, if I take everything that I'm doing right now with as much time as I'm putting into that, then why can't I make it work if I take that same time and dedication and totally pour it all into one thing? Is kind of like the thought process behind my official jump when I was like, okay, what am I actually doing and make this work? And in my opinion, it's like bet on yourself. You've already built the habits and relationships and stuff over the years. And again, at the end of the day, I think if I'm putting in 70, 80 hours a week, I can probably make more than $13 an hour.
Yeah, Nick, that's awesome, man. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in my office late at night on after a long week and been like, man, if I was just getting minimum wage, how much money would I be making right now? It's crazy, man. And I think for me, man, and that's kind of what I just realized, towards the end of my time in that team setting, is just no matter how much you pour into it, it's just never going to reciprocate that, right? In the team setting, you really are and that's not to say you're not working with good people. That's not to say that, those people don't care about you, because I had some awesome and unbelievable relationships from working in those places. But at the same time, man, if I could feel it, man, towards the end of my time there, I was like, man, if I died today, my job would be on Indeed in a month. Right. And it's just now I'm in this opportunity where it's whatever I put into it, I'm going to get back, good, bad, or indifferent. Right. If this thing fails, it's on me. But if it succeeds, it's also on me. And I know that at least there's always going to be that piece of hey, everything that I put onto this is going to come straight back to me versus, however many people that maybe even barely know my name or just, think of me as another employee. Right. And it is scary. Right. I think the biggest thing for me, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have had this since, the last leaving the team setting, is that you get a lot of people that reach out to you, ask you questions hey, that's part of the reason we're doing this podcast, but what's it like, what's the hard parts, man. I think for me, like, the hardest part is just in the team setting, like, if you just do a good enough job and you're likable, and you keep showing up, like, you're gonna get that paycheck, right? Like, every 2 weeks you're gonna get that deposit. You're gonna have health insurance. Those things are coming. Now it's like you only eat what you kill, right? I only eat when I make a sale. I only, make money when I get a client to sign up or I close a deal or so on and so forth. And even then, like, there's just so much delayed gratification that comes with this whole thing, right? And, like, that's what's been really hard for me because, like, you know, just thinking about, like, the hours and the days and the weeks that I've had to put in that haven't even started to show up yet, right? Like, in the team setting, it's hours, days, weeks. Now it's like the things that I'm doing now are weeks, months, and even years, right? Like, I'm just continuing to pour into it, and with just the hope is that, like, it's gonna come back, right? And, like, the scary thing is, like, you don't know if it's gonna come back, but if at any point you stop pouring into it, you've already lost the race, right?
Yeah, I just want to add on that. I mean, we're used to writing a program with the expectation that it's going to lead to a result. In the business realm, that's not going to happen. You never know. And then random stuff just falls into your lap and you're like, hell yeah, let's go. So it's that if this, then that you're used to at the college level, it's not going to happen in business. But at the same time, there's just magic stuff that shows up because you're saying yes to everything. So be ready, and it's going to fall in your lap, and you just got to be prepared for it. And yeah, I'm getting excited just talking about it. Yeah, Connor, you said whatever I'm putting into it, I'm going to get back. Like, that's a great mindset to go into each day, because yeah, it's still long hours when you're out here on your own, but at the same time, it's infinitely more fulfilling when something clicks because you were a good dude way back when, and now it's coming to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of these obstacles that get put in our path or the challenges that we face, at least for myself, a lot of them have been more mentally imposed than they've actually posed an actual challenge to me, if you will. And one of the things that I found, at least for myself, that helped me a ton is literally just writing stuff down, right? There's, I think it's Kidlin's Law or something like that that says if you just write down a problem clearly, you've already solved half the problem, right? So I did that for so many different aspects of business, right? Like for me, it's like, okay, like legal stuff. Like I need a business lawyer. I need to form an LLC. I need to file with the state. I need to keep good terms with the state. Oh, things changed. Now I have to file with the federal government. Like I wrote all that stuff down and it's like, okay, I've got that piece covered. What other things go into business? And this was just me like literally thinking out loud and talking with someone. And it was like, okay, well, I need a marketing funnel. I need something that, tells people who I am, where to find me, which at the time online was just the easiest thing because an Instagram account is free. So it's like, okay, so I've got the legal stuff taken care of. I've got the marketing stuff taken care of. Once you nail down your training facility, I think every coach, as you've all mentioned, is familiar with writing programs, right? And in a lot of ways, I feel like business goes hand in hand with S&C because as a strength coach, you're constantly worrying about the conditioning. You're worrying about their strength levels, their power output. Like you're used to training so many different things and considering so many different things all at once. I think it's more so just taking that skill set that you've built over several years and applying it to something new that looks and smells a little different. But at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of the language is very similar, if not the same. It just, again, it's packaged a little bit differently, if you will. And I feel like you guys have probably figured this out as well. Is like, I feel like once you put yourself in motion, you figure out a lot as you go. Like, I don't necessarily think you always need a master's in business. I don't think you need like the $20,000 guru coaching package in order to succeed as a S&C who wants to go their own route. I think a lot of the times for a lot of people, if you put yourself in motion and work like you guys have said you are, I feel like a lot of the success kind of comes around full circle to you just based on that effort and that willingness to try and fail repeatedly over and over and over again, right? You throw stuff against the wall long enough and eventually it starts to stick.
Yeah, what has been very beneficial to me is finding like-minded individuals, like all of us on this call, that have been in this same position. So found a coaching mastermind, and then leaning into that network. So I got dudes in Columbus, dudes in Dallas. So Dr. Dylan Seeley, he's up in Columbus, and then Nick Tintle, Lacrosse Barn in Dallas. So shout out those guys. So then they're going all in. They're investing in themselves just like us. So one tool that I learned, the head of that mastermind is Justin Kavanaugh. So Coach Cav on Instagram, great follow. And he talks about a 3-ring prospect. And this has been very beneficial to me because I can do everything. I can work with a 45-year-old or a 14-year-old. Doesn't matter. I can do all that stuff. But now I needed to zero in on what is my purpose, my focus, that who am I going after? So that's what I would suggest for a strength coach, because you can help anybody at any time, anywhere. You're a talented individual, but who do you want to work with the most? Who brings you just the most joy that you can put in that 80 hours and it feels like 8? So the 3-ring prospect that Coach Cav talks about is demographic, geographic, and psychographic. So where are they? If you got a home-based business and you have a brick and mortar, you already got your geographic. So demographic is going to be who you're going after. And then psychographic is what type of person. So it's not only the age group, it's now the type of person that's willing to wake up at 5 a.m. and go to your training sessions, or after school, what parents are willing to invest in their kids going there. So I'm online. So then how do I identify my demographic, geographic, and psychographic? So now it's finding people that are willing to invest in that. What high school coaches have hit the wall of frustration. They've realized there's this generational gap between what worked when they were an athlete and the athlete they're working with now. So now I can provide resources for those individuals that have just hit a boiling point, and they don't want to lose that breaking point, because there's nothing, and this is my personal bias, there's nothing worse in the world than high school administration. But that seems to be the route coaches are switching to, because they're falling out of love with the profession. So as much as us understand the college game and get frustrated with it, there's a whole bunch of high school coaches out there that are falling in the same trap, but they don't have the tools and the skill set to go start a business. So that's an example of my 3-ring prospect that I've dialed down to. So demographic, geographic, and psychographic. But that's all thanks to the team that I found and continue to lean in with challenges.
I think, you bring up a great point about like getting a mastermind, or getting in groups like this, or just getting around people who are doing what you want to do. Right. And if you've been in college and you're used to talking to other strength coaches, how do you program, how you're doing this? Like now you've got to reach out and get connected to other people that are doing business, whether it is in strength conditioning or even other businesses, and start learning that and learning from people who have taken the steps you're trying to take. Like Connor and I, we're part of the business of strength, and I know that's been a huge part for me, where I probably said maybe like 8 or 9 months ago, and I've seen huge growth since being there, where I have the people that are leading it and learning from them, but also other people in the group that have been where I've been, but now they're 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years further than I am, and getting to see maybe the mistakes they made, or the steps that led to the best ROI for them, and learn from that. And we're like in business, like you were talking about, Dan, like you've got to figure out a lot of stuff on your own. Like you do have to have that skill and ability to, when you find problems, like you've got to go hunt for solutions. But part of that is going to be a community and a network to lean on when you have to hunt for those solutions, and not just, there's a lot you got to figure out on your own from experience, but also from other people's experience too.
You know, Tex, as you brought up the demographic in particular, that's one area I feel like a lot of people, I don't want to say sell their soul, but they maybe don't go all in as they maybe need to, if you will, right? Like, you know, they come out and they say, hey, you know, I want to work with soccer athletes, or I want to work with high school and college athletes on the private side, or whatever it is that way. And then along the line, some of these other opportunities come up, and it becomes very difficult to say no to them, right? Like, you know, if your whole goal is I want to work with high school athletes and that's going to be it, but their parents start to call you up and say, hey, look, I need training. Can I come in and train with you? Oh, and by the way, I don't mind paying extra. I don't mind working around your schedule. I think it becomes very difficult to kind of figure out this demographic problem when on one hand, it's like, okay, I want to stay tried and true to the clientele that I want to work with, right? This is who I am. This is my brand identity. But on the other hand, there's times when it's like, hey, look, money is really, really tight this month. I don't have as much revenue coming in as I thought I would. I have bills to pay, and I have the opportunity to take on other clientele. It doesn't fit my demographic. It's not who I am. And there's probably better people for that population out there, but they're offering, they want to work with me. Do I say no to them, or do I just stay true to the path that I'm on? And I think that's a situation that's always going to depend on the individual. And it's probably a bit of a loaded situation, but it's one that I've heard come up for people over and over and over again. And it's just such a difficult one to navigate. Because again, on one hand, very easy to stay true to the path and say no. But on the other hand, it's like, man, if I've got a family, if I've got kids, if I've got bills that have piled up, you know, whether that's on the business or myself personally, it can be really painful to say no to some of them, I feel.
Yeah. So that's what I call plan plus. So in that first year, you're going to be saying yes to everything. And then I would start charging more for stuff you don't want to do. So then it's like, all right, if I'm putting in that hour with mom, I don't want to do this, but I can, I'm capable. Now it's not my normal rate. It's double my normal rate. So I can at least get some incentive and momentum behind it. So if that's the case, yes, I understand completely. Plan plus this, start charging more. And then you never know. You could just have half the time in that week. Maybe you have 6 hours dedicated to the plus that you don't want to do. But now it's almost more than you're making during that a 12-hour period that you're dedicating to the athletes you're training. Now we're in a good place. Or can you turn it into groups instead of that one-on-one? Who does she know? So now I'm really multiplying that time. And group stuff, me personally, is a lot more fun. They can play off each other versus me just in personal training environment, just trying to lift up this conversation for 60 minutes. And more often than not, personal training is just therapy with movement. So can I turn this into a group session? What other moms or dads or whoever can we include in this so I can really maximize that time? And then, I mean, many private high schools, you have the opportunity where this is your weight room time for the kids, and they don't mind if you open it up to personal training hours. That'd be a good example of my plan plus, where now I'm getting those extra hours in, or training teachers to get there. So don't say no, just increase the price tag to where, okay, yeah, this is actually worth my time. And how can I make it fun by bringing more people in? So it's, I mean, really lucrative in that moment in time that you don't want to do it.
No. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, man. I think about kind of like myself, and that was one of the things I struggle with right away when I got into this, because like when I think about like where that I want to get to in my career, like where do I want this thing to end, like eventually get to, like I ultimately just want to get to a point where I'm doing return to play, right? And like if you think about that, it's like a really small market, right? Like how many athletes actually need return to play in the area that I'm working in? How many athletes can actually afford it? You know, how is that going to work when I'm going up against all these other people in like this really niche area and this niche topic, in a relatively like small community, right? And so like, how can I buy that time in the meantime until I can kind of start to work towards that? But at the same time, like, yeah, I really think like don't be afraid to lean into that niche, right? Like I think about like, the people that like I kind of try to emulate and where I want to get to, right? Like there are 1,000, I can say actually the numbers in the Pittsburgh area, for example. Like I know there's over 55 options for sport performance and training options in the area, right? But I can think of 2 people outside of myself that actually offer return to play services, right? Or at least that market it in some way and, lean into those things, right? And so like I think about like where ultimately it is that I want to get to and the people that have done it at a high level, right? Like, Dan, I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with these people, but like, you know, if you have like a tendon injury going on, right? Like you're gonna call Jake Tura, right? If you have like a hip or a groin injury going on, you're gonna call Enda King, right? Um, and I think about like where that I want to get to. That's kind of where I want to be, and that's where I want to continue to dive deep into. And it's scary, right? Because you're only narrowing in your scope of practice, and you're already limiting your options even more so. But I do think there's a point if you can continue to develop enough and you can continue to become that niche and become like, hey, like, oh, like I got a hamstring. It's like, well, I know I got to call Connor, right? And so I think like, yes, being able to build ways to sustain an income, answer some of those problems, especially earlier on in the process, like you had talked about, man, like that plus plan, I think is awesome. But at the same time, like not being afraid to continue to niche down as you get deeper into this thing. Because to me, those are the people that truly find success and truly get to do what they ultimately want to do. And that's the whole reason we're doing this thing in the first place, right? Like if I just want another job, like I can go work at Enterprise right now, right? Like there's got to be an end goal of mine and you got to have a pathway to actually get there.
Yeah, I agree with that kind of where, like, I feel like sometimes, especially when you're first starting out, maybe having that more specialized niche, like, especially based on your background, where like kind of like, you had your return to play background in college and now you're able to kind of translate to what you want to do now and have that specialization. Like for me, I was in college with basketball for the past number of years and had a lot of background with basketball and then different connections. So for me is like, hey, a lot of my athletes, especially starting out, were all basketball players. And then it starts to grow there. And it's like, okay, now these people are wanting to come because it's like, I'm a basketball, like I train basketball players and we still had other athletes and stuff, but that's mostly what it grew from. And then now, you start getting these other sports. And it's like we get more and more volleyball. And we're trying to really grow into volleyball and expand that area. And like, I don't think that's in conflict at all with like what our brand is about, but maybe just expand a little bit. But having maybe that specialization at first allows you to become maybe an authority in that area where, around here, there's so many places, and there's big places like Sports Academy. There's the Exos that, serve everybody and are these huge places that I can't compete with from a facility or a staffing or a resource standpoint. But maybe at first, because like it's a place for basketball players, that basketball player is going to come choose to train with me versus this huge, nice facility because of that niche.
Yeah, and I think there's so much value in having that niche. But again, going back to the concept of the plus plan, if you will, that way, it's one of those things that can continue to evolve long term. I was just yesterday talking with a physical therapist who does cash-based pelvic health and charges about $400 per session. That's a very niche market. That's probably taken 98% or more of their potential clientele out of the picture just from what they work with and the price point that they charge. However, they have several other people that work for them and they're insurance based and they see anything and everything that walks through the door. So there's this concept of being the specialized person, but still having this general service that you can offer, if you will. And it's one of those things that when I first started out, I was very against it myself. I was very much just, I'm going to do this one thing and this is what we're going to be known for. But my own kind of opinion of that has certainly evolved over time. And I'm seeing more value in being able to offer other things, even though you yourself are known for one thing itself that way. I think there's value in the diversification that can come from that. And I think the other piece as well that plays into all that is this online presence in this online world that we live in now, right? Like you can have 5 different online programs that you offer and market very differently. You can have different accounts for each one that don't always overlap. Like Connor, you gave the example of Jake Tura earlier, and I'll use him again, right? Like he's got hypertrophy clusters, but he's also got jumper's knee protocol, right? They're different things, but they're marketed by the same guy, and they're both absolutely incredible. So I think the online space opens up a whole lot of things that maybe didn't exist earlier. And I'd love to hear more from you guys if you're using the online space, and if so, how, whether that's for marketing purposes or training purposes. You're running programs, you're hosting podcasts like Tex, John. I know you guys both have your own podcast that way. Like, how does all of that stuff kind of play into and feed into what you do and what you're known for?
I'll bridge the gap here. So with the online and the topic we were just discussing previously, you want to be as niche as possible online. So then for those extra clients, if I start marketing what I'm doing outside of my niche, then I'm going to start attracting more, and it starts to dilute what I'm doing. So personal training wise, I have one client, he's low functioning autistic. I know the family. I like the family. I don't put anything online because I'm good with that one client. I'm not looking to expand that market. So online, outwardly, it's what I want to attract and represent that. So then the business is, so I do online training, but it's what I'm doing for my workouts. I'm very bored with traditional strength and conditioning, so I make it weird. That is just marketed on my personal page, but then my business is the education. It is the podcast. It is the product and services that I'm offering. So personal, that's the training. That's what I'm into. It's representing my day-to-day life. Then my business is what I am offering, presenting, and putting out there. So, I also have to have a plan. Even if it's my personal Instagram, I have to have a plan. It's very difficult. It's going to feel inauthentic, but that's why you got to make it as authentic as possible and have a schedule. What I like to do is Monday through Friday, Saturdays are my time, Sundays are my time. I'm not going to worry about social, but Mondays, movement-based stuff could be my training, or within the lacrosse team, I just pop up the camera and use my finger to point out, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I see the knee doing. I talked to this kid about this, and we did this movement. Then Tuesdays, I call them text talks. It's where I've got a whole bank of presentations that I've done, and I just try to clip out a minute. Then Wednesdays, podcast-based. Thursday, it's a picture of something cool that I've done, and here's a story. I've mentioned traveling the world. Been fortunate, 6 continents all over. Let me go back in my Google Photos, find some cool tale, and then tell that. And then Fridays are the strongest lift, pun intended here. Like, I just got to put something up there so I'm present. It is a fight, and that's my personal, and then professional is just reserved for presentations and podcasts. It's work, but I write down on my whiteboard Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then I have to scribble in something. And guess what? We're all perfectionists here. That's why we're coaching and diving into this. We want the best of people. It doesn't have to be perfect. Put it up there. It's going to be out of people's sight, minds, brains within 24 hours, right? Think of a story, if they even see it. And then great advice that I got is take a bunch of pictures throughout your day, and instead of posting them live, before I go to bed or shut off my phone for the evening, I just 1, 2, 3, 4 stories, pictures that represent. So it's a picture of us at a huddle at practice, or picture of the freaking weight room with the time, right? I train at 9:30 a.m. like clockwork. We're coming up on it. So now it's just the weight room. It's just a picture of weight room. It's not a story. So it's just pictures that keep it going and present, and that's going to feed the stupid algorithm, which is going to change next week and what they do. So if you are consistent, it's going to feel less awkward, and it's going to be authentic and represented to you, because it is your life you're going through. People are going to want to connect with you, so you have to share you and what you're doing. So that's a little bit of a rant, but yeah, be authentic, be focused and targeted, and then still reserve a lot of your personal life just for you. Don't put everything up there. Don't be that guy. And yeah, that's all I got. I'm gonna step off my soapbox.
Yeah, no, I think that was awesome, man. I think about, a lot of things there. Being able to create systems and holding yourself accountable to those systems, right? Like that's way more in depth than I even have started to think about, Chris. For me, man, it's just 3 socials a week, 1 email a week. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It has to get done, right? Try to be consistent with those times of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 10 a.m. Try to, like you said, feed that algorithm. But then also, man, like catering to your client, right? And we've talked about that a little bit here of like, who is your ideal client and what do they want to see, right? And like, where is that information going? Like, I know on my personal page, because coaching education and developing relationships, coaches, and networking, like, that's where that stuff's going to live, right? Like, talking about eccentric quasi isometrics and loading protocols and all that fun stuff that I geek out all about, all the time. A lot of my friends do and colleagues versus like, you know, my business page, which is geared towards athletes, parents, coaches, and just trying to find things on their level and what do they want to see? What problems do they have? And how can I provide them solutions for those problems? Right. And I think to your point, Chris, like I think we so drastically overestimate our reach with these things, right? Because like that was a big thing for me earlier on with like a lot of this marketing stuff. I was just like I never want to be that guy because like I'm sure we can all think of that website or that that email that you signed up for. Like I love like TRX is a perfect example. I don't know if you guys get their newsletters, but like they're never not having a sale. Like if you ever buy anything from TRX for face value, you're crazy because every other day I'm getting a text message for 25% off, 30% off. But like all I have to say is like it's really easy to be like, oh, I don't want to like overwhelm it. I don't want to oversaturate it. But it's amazing to me the deeper that I get into this is that how small of a reach that I actually have and how few people even get their eyes on it, whether alone even they actually like look at it, right? Like you never want to be too much, but the reality is like what I've come to realize is there's just not too much. And like the ability to continue to put yourself out there and be consistent and create these systems, I think is huge. And I think to your point, Dan, about being able to like create the online stuff for me has been huge, not just from a marketing standpoint, but from a service standpoint. Like when I think about what my core offerings are at my physical location, right? Like I have a 20-mile radius realistically of, that's even probably pushing it of like potential customers. And then once you start to like fit in, the socioeconomical piece and the sports and all those things, like it's a very, very small niche. But then once I started to go online, and I never thought this was going to happen, like when your clientele goes from the people in your area to the entire world, man, it just opens up a whole new floodgate of opportunities, right? I think about like before I was able to get into my physical location, I started to like do online services. And for months I had zero luck, right? And I was pumping it out every day, online training, online rehab, consulting, working on courses that are going to be coming out and all these different things. And I was just like, oh, this is just be something I can do until I can get, a space to work with actual athletes. And then lo and behold, 6, 7, 8 months later, that's like 60% of my business. And I've been able to have outreach to athletes I think we're at 6 different countries now around the world. And it's just like, never in a million years did I ever think that was even a possibility, right? Like, a couple weeks ago, I had a consultation call with a cricket coach in New Delhi, India, and I'm like, in what world does this guy even know who I am, and why would he even care what I have to say? But it's just so amazing when you start to put yourself out there, and I think you learn to develop a good product, and you start to scale yourself out that way. The possibilities are, I think, endless.
I got another point to dive in on that for online coaching. The in-person clients, I put them on the online training program. So got a bunch of dads that just come to my garage to lift weights. They're paying the online training fee and then they move and go away, they're still involved and on the online training. So I've taken the lessons I've learned in building community and then brought that to the online training experience. I'm having people film their lifts. They're putting it into the Train Heroic feed, shout out Train Heroic. And then I'm just coaching them up on there. So that's been beneficial to help build community and connection in the online space. So what can you do to help, one, start an online community, and two, continue to nurture and build it? And I'm leaning into what I know as a coach is movement, and then praising in public. So shouting out people, maybe they logged X amount of workouts this week, or they've hit a 10-week streak of hitting workouts. I can see that on Train Heroic, and then just call them out in the feed, or, call them out, praise them in public, and go on from there. So all the tools that and find successful within the weight room, if you start that online training team, bring them to that training team, and you're going to have success, because that's what people are craving. Now, life circumstances brought them to a position where they can only go online, because they are now families. They're now short on time. They started a garage gym, or they have to go to Globo Gym to do it. They're craving that, because everyone at Globo Gym's got their earbuds in and they're not talking to you. In the garage, you got your community inside. Now I want to build my community. A big theme within my program, it's who's looking out for the leaders. It's the heads of households. It's dudes that started their own businesses. So now we need a program. It's called Old Bull, shameless plug. So now this is a program for us to then call out each other's issues, challenges we're dealing with. So that's the aim, is take every tool and lesson that you've mastered, building a team within the weight room, and just do the exact same playbook online. And that's going to help facilitate and keep people involved and feel involved, even though they're thousands of miles away. They're a world away as a coach in India. So yeah, everyone here that's listening has the toolkit. It's just the confidence to apply it in a new world, in a new realm.
Yeah, and I think one thing I do want to bring up real quick as well is we've talked at length about starting something of your own and going all in on it and so on that way. But I'm sure someone is going to at some point think about some of the stats and numbers of like, well, what if it doesn't work out? And one of the things that I've come to realize is you can always go back. No one can fault you for it. You can always turn around and go back to what you were doing, right? There's tons of job opportunities. There's literally whole Discord channels dedicated to job opportunities, right? Like there's a lot more out there than I think people realize, whether that's in the team environment or working for someone else privately or working for a high school, or even some of these new things that have popped up where some of these different healthcare systems that I've talked with are literally starting to hire strength coaches and offer preventative fitness type programming, if you will, right? Like it is okay if your first attempt doesn't go like you think it's going to go. It's okay if you have to kind of step away and come back a few years later. And I think that's something a lot of people don't always discuss. Like everyone always thinks, oh, we have to succeed. Oh, we have to go all in, right? Like, I thought the same thing in relation to like my ACL return to sport progressions, right? And I was going real strong 2.5 years, knock on wood. We didn't have a single re-injury. And then that first one happened. And, again, our stats are still good, but it's like that first one happens and you start to realize like, oh, maybe I'm not as invisible as I thought I was, right? Maybe things aren't always going to be perfect and it's not always going to go according to plan. That's okay. I can always pivot, shift, and adjust based on the circumstances that way. And you can always turn around and go back, right? Like, I think a lot of times people are afraid or ashamed to do that. And I felt that myself with different things that way. But I think ultimately just knowing that you can always go a different direction and the door's always open, you just have to walk through it based on whatever phase of life you're in. But I realize we can probably talk about that stuff all day long, guys. Really appreciate your time and
Dan, one note on that to just reinforce it. And yeah, he's become a great friend. So Coach K, he's at UTSA. He owned his own facility in Oklahoma, and then his daughters moved to San Antonio. So shuts down his facility, volunteers his first year as football strength coach at UTSA. He used to be on the Oilers, phenomenal dude. And then he saw a bunch of challenges that they were facing at that program. So he's like, all right, well, I'm here. I'm going to be where my feet are. I'm with my family. And then eventually got enough change and ears from the head football coach to join the staff full time. So he made the sacrifice to be with his daughters to then find himself back in collegiate strength and conditioning again. He was at Rice previously before opening his own facility. And he's no less of a man. He's actually doing amazing things at that UTSA program because that's a transfer portal, basically. You're getting dudes that either failed out of great D1 schools, they need a second chance, or dudes that were mid-major JUCO that want game film. So he gets all walks of life in that weight room, and he's doing amazing things. So once you stop thinking about yourself, it's like, all right, let's be where my feet are, and then I can help and connect with the people in front of me, no matter if we're in our own facility or within a weight room again. So no shame at all. That's the right way to do it. Just focus on the people in front of you, and that's why we're all coaches. That's why we're all in this.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. As we start to wrap up, because I realize there's a lot of levels and layers to this, and we could talk about it all day long that way. Is there anything we missed or anything that you want to close out on that way?
Man, the one thing I would just say is that for the people that are thinking about making that jump listening to this podcast, like I referred to earlier, I'm sure we've all had a lot of friends and colleagues that have been in that maybe team or formal setting or just doing something else where they have a little bit more stability and they're just considering making that jump, man. And I had a weird path where like I quit and then, I was just like, all right, I guess I'm going private now. And here we go. And I'm moving to a city where I knew nobody and I had zero relationships and I had zero business experience, right? Like a year ago, like I couldn't tell you what a profit and loss was, right? Like I just had no clue about any of this side of things. My entire life was in that team setting where I knew my athletes were going to be. I knew what I was doing and all those sorts of things. If you're listening to this and you're thinking about like, hey, this is a step that I know I eventually want to take now, start to plant those seeds now. Because I just can't tell you like how much easier I think it would have been on myself had I thought, even a year ago, I had so many connections with people in this area, or at least opportunities to connect with people in the area and start to develop some of those relationships and plant some of those seeds for later on down the road versus just coming here and starting from scratch. And I just know for me, like that was such a mistake that I would have been made. And had I been able to do that, I definitely think I'd be a lot farther along than I am now.
I'll leave with a sports analogy, and this is what I teach the lacrosse players I coach: is think 2 passes ahead. So that's an offensive theme in lacrosse is pass, pass, dodge. So we get the defense to move. Now in business, if I'm thinking 2 passes ahead, in a weight room, you're so used to just living present in the moment. But now I got to think about quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. I got to think about year 2, year 3, year 4. So what seeds can I plant that Connor expressed there that are going to start to root in Q3, that are really going to blossom and bloom in year 2? So how far can I look ahead and start to invest my time and efforts now, minimal efforts now that are really going to pay off big? And that's what I would guide. Think 2 passes ahead. So if you are in a college right now and you're thinking about getting out, what can you do now that's going to prepare for success later on? And I mean, there's plenty of online opportunities out there to just get started. And while you have a brand name on your back, you can utilize that to really attract some right people if your university rules allow.
Yeah, and then just real quick, just following up on both of those. I mean, again, if you're somebody, let's say, in the college setting and you're wondering if and when the right move is possible. I think it goes back to just, again, betting on yourself, going for it, but also, again, having a plan in place before you actually know what is attainable from like being able to take those steps. So again, time management is something I looked at with my past job, which is, again, how many hours or other hours in the day do I actually have to be able to pour in something to if and when I do take that step, you can be kind of like Connor had said, and I'm kind of in the situation now, whereas like, again, you already take the steps in the position that you are in. So when you do make the jump, it's like you've already kind of put yourself in a really successful spot rather than just kind of getting up and leaving everything with no plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, so people want to find out more about you online, keep up to date with all the amazing stuff you're doing that way, where can they find you at? You know, social handles, websites, all that kind of stuff.
I'm currently working on finishing up some website stuff in hopes to be able to launch a little bit that more coming in January, which will be Live Free Perform. And you can find me on Greyno Strength on Instagram. I typically try and connect with as many people as possible, whoever reaches out.
Live Free Perform. Great name. Yeah. Captainsandcoaches.com. I got a podcast. I got a newsletter. I basically take my notes from my podcasts and put them out there in like lecture and presentation form. So that's the best resource. Instagram personal. If you want to follow the life with 2 acres and 2 dogs, it's McQuilkin, my last name, McQuilkin.
And find me pretty much anywhere at Rebuild PR_. Website, rebuildperformancerehab.com. So if you're listening to this, need help, need guidance, you just need somebody asking questions, man, please feel free to reach out anytime, because I would not be where I am now had I not done that. And the people that are, given their time for me to help me out. So if I can do that for anyone else, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll link to all of that in the description below. That way, if people didn't quite catch it, they can just click there and keep up to date with all of y'all online. Guys, really appreciate the time and the insights. Thanks so much for everything.